But you want to be a lady.
I've left everything I ever had.
I know you think I'm not half good enough.
A very respectable woman.
Give dinner parties and entertain your husband's friends.
I'm sure Cleopatra never bothered about napkin rings.
I'm not a well-behaved.
But I want you to be absolutely perfect.
Welcome back to the Well-Behaved Woman Podcast. Podcast musical. Yeah.
Well, we were in the research episodes, so you won't hear musical today.
That's true. No music yet. Just
we could sing a little song.
Tell what is love, baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. Why?
Because this is what our theme is today.
Love and war.
Dun, dun, dun.
Robyn, is all fair in love and war?
That's a good question. No. I don't think so.
I'm Katrina.
And I'm Robyn.
And we're sisters.
And we're writing this podcast musical together.
And this is Sully.
This is Sully, apparently.
Can you make a
the
sound,
dog.
Sully?
Can you talk for the people just listening? No, we got nothing.
Nope, nothing. All right, to start off today's episode, or I guess more intro, love and war, we're talking about the early young adult years of being a woman, perhaps a career, perhaps being a mom, perhaps just being a wife. There's a couple different stages that you might be in as a young woman and as a Mennonite. However, in the 1930s, you're most
30s,
likely
40s.
a mom and a wife.
Yeah, 30s, 40s. That is you're getting married.
Yeah.
And having kids.
Yeah, pretty
Otherwise,
much.
you're a spinster.
Yep. So
I'm 27. I'm unwed.
I'm already a burden to my parents.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Thanks, Jane Austen, for that. Our first guest we have is Sheila Kalssen-Wiebe. She is an associate professor of New Testament at Canadian Mennonite University.
Yeah, she was so good to talk to. She had so many good stories.
She had some good thoughts.
She was a new mom while doing her PhD.
Yes. Her and her husband were both doing their PhDs while being a new mom, but her husband ended up backing off of his studies so that she could pursue her career because she's a woman.
Yeah. And
what a wild story for the 90s.
It's really cool.
So enjoy.
I think a lot of women, Mennonite women, and women generally have felt like in the 70s and 80s felt like they were not given opportunities for leadership because they were women. And especially in the church, and I have heard many of those stories and understand those, but that is not my story. I am where I am, partly because I am a woman, and the teaching opportunities I've had are because the institutions I've worked at wanted women. When I was at AMBS, a really important person for me there was Gail Gerber-Kuntz. Because she was like I knew a number of single women that had gone on to get PhDs, but here was a woman who was, I think she was finished her PhD then. She had a PhD, she was teaching, she had babies, and so here was somebody. So there were times when I thought, I don't know if I can do this, like juggle having family and be married and teaching and getting a PhD. Can I do this all? Gail did it. Maybe I can too. And so that was really important for me. So yes, there is the women that came before me and kind of laid the groundwork were just really important. Like when we have kids, you just sort of do the next thing in front of you. Like I was trying to write a dissertation and have children and teach. And it was like, I think I wanted to be more open and talking about things with my kids. So two things. Both that my growing up and my fairly conservative, traditional makes me feel more inhibited. I think to talk about some of these things because my mom didn't talk to me about it. How does one talk to one's kids? And also at the same time, not wanting to be like that. And so trying to make talk about periods and menstruation and sex and all of that just more normal and okay to talk about and open. So I consciously did that with our kids, and you know, I have three daughters between the ages of 29 and 37. They have taught me a lot as well about especially LGBTQ plus issues, and what it means to be affirming and welcoming. And so I feel like I have learned a lot from them. Probably, my kids would probably say I am more modest and conservative in terms of clothing and sexuality and so on. Having said that, I think I have learned a lot from them as well. I think that's true that a lot of women started their careers later. I started my PhD when she was a year old. So like in my late 20s, I started my PhD. So earlier than some people. And the reason for that is because CNBC said, you go get your PhD and we'll hire you. And so that, and I, honestly, this is something I've said before. And I said yes to doing this, before I had any kids. I think I sometimes wonder, and you look back and you think, well, what would have happened? But if I had a baby before I made a commitment to do higher education, would I have done it right away? I love being an academic. I love learning. I love teaching. I love studying. And so I don't think I would have been a very good stay-at-home mom. I think I would have gone out of my mind. Having said that, it created a real tension within me, that the tension between being a mom, which I loved. I just love being a mom and having, having children, and I love babies, and like doing a PhD is a very intense and time consuming, and teaching. And so there was there's always this, some tension, some rub. I'm always, my whole life, am I being a good enough mom? Am I spending enough time with our kids? It was hard. And we had decided, and I still agree with this, that we did not want somebody else raising our kids. And so we were committed to not having full-time childcare. For the most part, we did that. So one of us, and it's because we were both in school, and one of us was always home with our kids at least half time. It took me a little bit over 10 years to finish my PhD, because because I was teaching, and I said that I am not going to work in the evenings until my kids are in bed. So I would teach during the day. Sometimes I would even go home for lunch. I would start preparing lecture notes at 10 or 11 at night and regularly stay up till 3 in the morning. And my PhD, my dissertation would get worked on in the summers or on sabbaticals. It took me a long time. And I did it. My husband eventually didn't finish his PhD. He graduated with a master's degree. It was just too difficult for both of us to be doing dissertations at a distance. So he stayed home with our kids. He did some part-time work, but he was a stay-at-home dad and was the one that was home with our kids for lunch when the school was just across the back alley. And so they came home for lunch, and he was there after school when they came home. He was the one that went to the playground with them. This was different at that time. And so he would take our kids to the playground, and there would be a bunch of moms there hanging out and talking. And he didn't have a mom support group. And I think it was really challenging for him too, to think about his identity, what he had not finished his degree, and so much expectation on me as an academic, as a woman, as a professor, like CNBC. So they hired me on the assumption that I would get my PhD. So there was incredible pressure on me to do a good job. Like, I have to finish this PhD because they are saving a job for me, and they believe in me. And it took me 10 years. They gave me tenure before I was finished my PhD because they believed in me. And I saw this feeling like I have to live up to this calling, this responsibility to be a woman and professor. And also the expectations about being a mom and going to parent-teacher interviews and helping with homework and being there for my kids and getting up at night when they're throwing up and putting them to bed and all of that. It was a lot. It was a lot. I think back now, how did I do that? have no idea how I did that. So when we got married, now we didn't want just a tradition. We didn't want the kind of wedding that was a show where, the bride is everything. Everybody stands up when the bride walks in, and the man gives away, the dad gives away his daughter. I think it was a strange wedding in my very traditional Mennonite church, but it was reflected more who we were. Part of that, wanting to do things differently, then my husband also said, well, why should the woman just take the man's name? And I thought, well, that's just the way it's always done. This is how everybody in my church does it. Do we really want to buck another trend? But we talked about it, and this was before my pre-feminist thinking. My introduction to feminism came at AMBS. But anyway, but I thought, why is that? Why do I have to lose my Kalssen identity and get married? So we talked about, well, should he take my name? And hyphenating names wasn't such a big thing then. So this is what we did. We decided Kalssen would be both of our middle names. It's not, and I also thought, well, if we're getting married, there's a coming together of two people here, why should we each keep our own names? So that was part of the whole emphasis on mutuality in marriage. So we wanted the same name. So we both took Kalssen as a middle name. So then I went to work at Elam. I was Sheila Wiebe. Nobody put the Kalssen in my name. I didn't like that. I thought, no, I'm losing my Kalssen identity. And so then we went through the whole formal process of changing my name to be hyphenated. Vern kept it as a middle name, but I hyphenated my last name so that I could still be a Kalssen-Wiebe. Then when we had children, we thought, okay, then what are we going to do? Am I remembering this right? I hope I'm remembering this right. We had to make a decision. What are our kids going to be? Are our kids going to be Wiebe? Are they going to be, and I'm going to be a Kalssen-Wiebe? Or should Vern become a Kalssen-Wiebe too? Or do we just go back? Or do I stay Kalssen and he be a Wiebe? Or do some of our kids have Wiebe and some of them have Kalssen? We just decided, no, we're one family. We're all going to have the same name, and we're going to hyphenate. And so when we had kids, we decided that's when we would both formally hyphenate our names. So then we had to go through the whole changing the name process with the government again, vital statistics. And Vern became a Kalssen-Wiebe, and all our kids are Kalssen-Wiebes. So to be a Mennonite woman has elements of culture and ethnicity, but that is not a specific culture and ethnicity. My Mennonite enculturation happens to be the German-Russian one, and I love that. But that is not what makes me Mennonite. What makes me Mennonite is my faith, which is centered on Jesus, which is expressed in a life of service, peacemaking, community, all those lovely Mennonite things. And that is what makes me Mennonite. To be a Mennonite woman, I think, again, there's all this baggage that comes with that. To be a Mennonite woman should not be any different than being a Mennonite person. In some ways, I just want to resist the whole category of Mennonite woman, because I am a woman, and I am a woman who is a Mennonite, and that means that I am a woman with certain faith convictions. I grew up in certain traditions. I think that there have been cultural and societal and religious expectations of what a Mennonite woman should be. But I think by our lives, we say what it means to be a Mennonite woman. And for me to be a Mennonite woman is to follow Jesus, to live a life of peacemaking and service, and to do that as a female. Mennonite women can come with all sorts of baggage, and I want to resist the baggage and say, I'm a woman who's a Mennonite. I attended, there were some women doing theology conferences happening for a while. I don't know if they happen anymore. I think they have occasionally, but there was a women doing theology conference at AMBS. And this was like my I don't know. I was only there 2 years. I can't remember I think the first year. And that was a life-changing experience because I was in a room we were met in the chapel, and there were women leading worship. There were women preaching. Most of the people attending were women. And it was like woman power. And I thought, I experienced women doing all these things in the church that I had never experienced before. And it was powerful. It was artistic and emotional and thoughtful and academic and spiritual. And it was a powerful, powerful full body experience. And I think I've never said this before, actually, but I think I became a feminist at that conference because I realized women have not been in the church and in history, have not been able to express themselves and lead and speak and do worship in the ways that was embodied. It was an embodied worship. It was a beautiful experience. And so, then it continued. And I had some feminist awareness before that because I was the only woman teaching at Elam, and but that sort of started it off. And then as kind of the intentional affirmative hiring. And then I started teaching feminist theology here about 10 years ago. And that was life transforming too. So one of my students about 10 years ago said, so why doesn't CBC offer a feminist theology course? And we had occasionally, but I hadn't for a while. And so I went to the department and I said, why don't we teach a feminist theology course? And they said, well, yeah, we should, but you teach it. And I had taken feminist theology at AMBS, but my PhD was very white male centered. It was in a box. And so my PhD, my graduate studies was not at all feminist. Anyway, so about 10 years ago, I started teaching this. It's been a lot of fun. And it's been fun talking with students and just trying new things. And it's still so important that we talk about feminist theology and purity culture and God, how we talk about God and what women in leadership and sexuality and all of that stuff.
All right, so we interviewed Marlene, Dr. Marlene Epp again, and we talked to her about all of this.
Yeah, we gave her kind of free rein at the end of our interview, just asking, is there anything else you want that you think we should talk about? And
that's important.
She brought up midwifery and how that was actually a really common thing.
Midwifery.
I think yeah, right. And that was a common thing for young women to do as kind of a career in that time period, to go around and help deliver babies. If you don't know what a midwife is, so she tells a little story about a really interesting midwife that she'd been researching,
who had documented her travels and the different places she went and the people she worked with, and she had a whole journal.
Yeah, she had a whole lot to say, but you'll hear all about it.
Yeah. One of the most interesting midwives that I studied lived in Saskatchewan for quite a while, in Glenbush, Saskatchewan. Do you know where that is? I'm not sure I even know where that is. She came to Canada. So she was trained as a midwife in St. Petersburg, Russia. And then she lived in Siberia. And she was a professional midwife in Siberia because that's where a whole bunch of Mennonites settled early in the 20th century. And then she immigrated to Canada in the late 1920s. And she was a midwife in the Glenbush, Saskatchewan area. And then she retired to Vineland, to the Niagara Peninsula. And she was just a healer there. So a lot of them were healers, had healing practices alongside of midwifery. But she's a fascinating woman. She has a book that records 1,400 births that she assisted at. And
what's her name?
Sarah Decker Thielman, Thielman.
So we talked to our sister.
Yeah, this one's the special one for you.
So our sister Stevie.
She talked about our grandma.
Yeah, which it very much inspired this project.
Yeah, it really did. So
to us, she's the OG Mennonite woman.
Yeah, she's the ideal Mennonite woman to us. So this is our sister Stevie, who is an expert on all things our grandma. She's been researching our grandma's story for a book she's writing, which she will talk about in this next clip.
So I am Stevie Gaultier, but I used to be Stevie Froese. So I'm Robyn and Katrina's older sister and also a Mennonite woman by heritage. And I've been working on a book for a few years, kind of got sidetracked now that I've had a new baby, but I'll get back on it eventually. And this book is transcribing my grandma's whole life that she had written an autobiography. And I'm adding in letters and cards and pictures and anecdotes and different research aspects that I've been collecting throughout the way. Anyways, so I have grandma's whole story, and I've been asked to share a little bit about the topic of love from our grandmother's perspective. Yeah. Should I get going for that now? Get going. Okay. I don't know if anyone's going to be seeing this, but the background behind me, the woman in the middle here is our grandmother, Anne. And these are some of her friends. And this just is a very very telling picture of who she is, where she just loved to get lost in books. She kind of fancied herself as the Anne of Green Gables of the Mennonite world. So it's kind of a cute thing, but I prepared a little bit of a thing. I'll try not to read it right off the page. I'll ad-lib a bit, but here's just so that I don't get the aspects of the story incorrectly here. But so some people, they spend their whole lives looking for love, but she didn't. She didn't need a husband to be remarkable. She needed a life worth living. Well, I've been turning my grandmother's handwritten autobiography into a book for a few years now. Like I said, she was an English teacher, a dreamer, and as it turns out, she's a pretty darn good writer, actually. So since this episode is about love, this is just a small snapshot of a much larger love story, and we'll look at her specific love life. Anne Friesen was a Mennonite, born in Manitoba on a farm in 1926 before moving to the big city of Winnipeg. But she was unusual for her time and her culture, deeply devoted to God. But by her early 20s, she had a teaching career and was unmarried and loving it. She said she thought she was in love a few times, but it wasn't reciprocated, or it just wasn't quite the right fit. And she also vowed she would never marry a Mennonite. She looked around and saw the Mennonite men around her and how the culture was, and just went, I don't think this is for me. But, she also writes about having this dull ache. She kind of describes it as a toothache, a little nagging feeling that she needed more in life. So feeling like God opened a door for her, she packed up, went north to the Buhr, Manitoba. This little place right on the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border. And she got her first big teaching job in music and English. It was her dream job. She was so excited to come up to the Buhr, Manitoba. She writes that this was the start of her life's great adventure. But cue the warnings. Her neighbors were telling her dad, oh, she's going to marry a non-Mennonite. Don't let her go. And her pastor had a meeting with her and made her promise, don't do anything foolish. If you get lonely, come home. They're very worried about her going out into the world. And she's in her early to mid 20s at this point, right? She's a fully grown adult. But Anne wasn't chasing romance. She was chasing adventure. And music kind of gave her a way into classrooms, churches, friendships, leadership roles at a time where women weren't really welcome to lead. And instead of the big church in town, which she actually describes as a mega church, but it's the Buhr, Manitoba, so how mega could have been? But she didn't vibe with the big church. She joined a small gospel mission, which she describes was on the other side of the tracks. And she joined as the lead in their choir. She directed the choir. Everyone else thought she was lowering herself. They're like, why are you going to this church in the bad part of town? But she thought she was exactly where she needed to be. And she was thriving. So she loved her life in the Buhr. Her first summer off, she went to Yarrow, BC to pick raspberries at her uncle's farm, something to do while she's not teaching. And while she was there, a Mennonite boy named Dave Froese was being transferred from Swift Current, Saskatchewan to the TD Bank in the Pas. So she comes back, and her roommate is her cousin, and she hears there's a new banker in town and he's Mennonite. But her first thought is, I'll just keep my money at the Royal Bank then. Like, she just wanted nothing to do with a Mennonite boy. Well, Dave, our grandpa, as you've seen pictures of him, he looked quite a bit like Elvis. Like, he was a good looking guy, and Elvis was pretty popular at the time too. So, like, you know, he was probably being talked about around town quite a lot. And he could sing. He had a really nice voice. So eventually someone got him to call Anne and ask about the choir. And apparently the phone call was pretty flirty, but he was like making no promises of joining this ragtag choir of 6 people or whatever it was, until one Sunday evening he shows up at practice. And now Anne doesn't really talk about what happened next. She doesn't talk about their courtship or their wedding. I don't know if the pages are missing or they're in a section of the book I just haven't got to yet and they're misnumbered or something like that. But either way, even her kids don't really know much about this time period. That's like how unimportant her love life is compared to everything else she had going on. We know that, like, she thought he was cute, probably. You know, she was attracted to him, and they definitely fell in love at some point. But we also know there's lots of tension over the fact that she was Mennonite Brethren, but Dave was Mennonite Conference. And Mennonite Brethren, well, they're kind of snobby. And the Conference, well, that's a liberal bunch. And he was one of those Mennonites. And Anne was a rebel. You know, it was like both their families, I think, were quite skeptical of meeting and having these 2 kids, as they would have thought of them, even though they were like almost 30 at this point, getting together. But Anne, so bubbly, so bright. She's fun to tease and hard not to love. So she definitely won over Dave's family and his brothers. There was no girls in that family, all boys. Eventually, Anne marries Dave. You know, she's nearly 30. It's almost the 50s at this point. She's older than him. City girl meets farm boy. She's an artsy, head in the clouds type. He's a practical, a bit irreverent kind of guy. Together, they're quietly scandalous, but hugely impactful in every community they moved to. And they finally settled in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and they had a huge impact in the city there as well. They're 2 of the most different kinds of people, really, but I think they're probably exactly who they needed for each other. Because Anne, throughout her book, talks about how she felt like a wild child or a wild woman and wanted someone to kind of keep her feet on the ground because she didn't want to be a bad kid or didn't want to be a bad person, right? And she didn't want to get lost in her fanciful ideas. And Dave could have benefited from an even larger dose of whimsy in his life. He needed a lot more whimsy. But they kind of helped each other out in that way, and they needed each other. Their anniversary cards they wrote for each other are pretty cute. In the book, you'll read a few of those. They're like, oh, it's a side of Grandpa I didn't know, that he was actually somewhat romantic. Yeah, Anne's love story, not about searching, not about settling, but about prioritizing a life that mattered and just trusting that love would keep up.
The next fun clip you're going to hear is from a really lovely lady named Annie Kroeker, who goes, or Kroeker, I never know.
All of these Mennonite last names. It's like
there's 2 pronunciations for everything.
Schrader, Schroeder.
Yeah. Froese.
Yeah.
So this one is, she's a really lovely woman who goes to Peace Church on 52nd here in Vancouver, which is my church and my husband's church that he's a pastor's at. And she tells a little story about how she met her husband when she was 15 years old on a boat immigrating to South America. So it's pretty cute. Here you are.
So it took us.
Yeah.
So I had to learn a little bit more, you know, and I got to know my husband in South America.
Okay, yeah.
We were actually on the same ship, but we didn't know each other then.
Oh, that's so funny.
Over.
Yeah.
So he later said, you know, I was seasick all the time and lying down on the outside, and wherever was room for me to lie down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when he was a young man, you know, he was 3 years older than I was 15, he was 18.
Okay.
And he had his boyfriends. And he said, later on, he told me, I saw you lying there, yeah. But we had no no idea from each other.
Yeah, that's funny.
But in Uruguay, they bought a big piece of land, and all the Mennonites from that same boat, we went to the same spot.
Okay.
So, and had to, we lived in a...
You made sort of a village together?
Yes.
Yeah.
From dirt houses.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and we lived in a dirt house.
Yeah.
Made from just dirt.
Just dirt. Wow.
And you can live with them. You can make it nice inside.
Yeah.
You know, even when I got married and had a little boys, we had a cement floor, and I kept it clean, and they could learn to crawl.
Yeah.
But they died already.
All right, are you ready for a minute?
Insert song here.
So we talked about it in the last episode, but we sat down for a tea with some women, and we just got to talk
and ask them a bunch of questions.
Yeah, it felt like just like a good old fashioned like little gossip session.
Yeah, little tea party. Spill the tea with the tea.
It was nice. And so this was a conversation we had with them about
the expectations of womanhood and purity culture.
Yeah.
Love that topic.
Bring it on.
Can't be a woman without experiencing purity culture in some degree.
Boom.
Here we go.
I had to cook. There was expectation. I had to serve my man, so to speak. I don't. I love to cook, though. I think it was modeled. Yeah. So what my Oma did is what my mom did, what my aunts did. You know, like that was just the expectations of you if you were going to be a wife, right?
And I never learned to cook at home. My mom did not like cooking. Till the day she died, she did not like cooking. We had the same meal over and over. Farmer sausage and fried potatoes.
Oh. Yeah, I think the expectation was that you don't need to go to university or higher education because you're just going to get married, have children.
My mother was the total opposite. She emphasized education.
Really?
All the kids went to university. She was so disappointed when my sister got married at 18 rather than going, because her life dream, my sister's dream was to be a teacher. But then she got married at 18, and it was like, oh no, she's just ruining her life. How can this happen? So she was very pro-education. It's like she just figured out that that's the only way out of, poverty, I guess. We grew up really in poverty. But as raising up, I think we were supposed to be proper, supposed to be well behaved. Yeah. No fuss, no muss, just do what you're told kind of thing. I know we were talking about it in high school. We were not allowed to dance, or I was not allowed to dance.
No, that's a bad thing.
That was a
And
bad
no
thing.
movies. And no movies.
And no movies either. No. The first movie I ever saw was Dr. Zhivago because my parents wanted to show me, I guess, what Russia was like. But I was like 10 years old, so I think I fell asleep.
And no rock and roll?
No rock and roll.
Music.
No, that was different in my house. We danced.
Yeah,
my parents danced.
I think it depends.
My parents danced. So.
John's parents.
I was allowed to dance at square dancing in high school.
Well, we were allowed to square dance and folk dance because you didn't really touch each other.
John took me to the very first movie at 18, and I saw James Bond, the very first one. And the pastor came along and saw me in line. Took me out of line. Gave me a talking to. So we didn't see the movie that day, but we did go a different day. And I did see it. But,
was that on Fraser Street?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, but he shouldn't have been out at 6 or 7 at night.
My mom was very clear that I needed to have a profession, though, like that I needed to have my own money because she worked as a seamstress in a sewing factory when we came to Canada. But she was reliant on my dad. She was very clear that I needed to have my own profession and my own money and make my own living.
I don't think the expectation was ever because you're a Mennonite, you have to do this. It was the expectations were you need to be able to provide for yourself and be a good member of society. Don't make a fuss. Don't if something is if something or if someone has wronged you, try to right it, but don't you be the person wronging. Yeah.
Not going to church was not an option. Same with not going to German school. Also not an option. Staying out after 7 o'clock at night. Not an option. And I had special socks for going to church.
Oh, wow.
Yes, from Ellie at the Delicatessen. She brings them in from Germany. They're the knee-high crocheted white ones.
Oh.
You can only wear the lacy top. You can only wear them on Sundays because they were white, and they had to be like white. Like,
yeah. And you had your black shoes.
Yes.
With your white socks.
And you only wore those on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think if you did dance, you just didn't talk about it.
I remember not talking.
Yeah.
Because I know my mom danced.
Yeah.
And I didn't find out until I was in my 40s.
Your mom's generation.
Mr. Nickel married us in 1981, and he said, "You will not kiss up front." He says, "There's be plenty of time for that afterwards." And I'm like, "Well, I was gonna have my veil down the front, and Harry was gonna lift it and give me that kiss." And we, you had the 6 weeks, whatever, the sessions, right?
Yeah.
And he said, "You won't." And we left shortly afterwards, when we're driving down the road and nobody's saying anything. And Harry says, "Well, that's bizarre." Well, something to that effect. I'm not going to quote him. But, that's bizarre. We can't even, kiss at the front. And of course, we told everybody we knew, and they're like, "Yeah, that's strange. That's strange." I don't know. Was it? Our guests must have been wondering, thinking, you may now kiss the bride. And it's
I
like,
don't think we did either.
Mr. Nickel married us. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you?
Interesting. 79. I don't remember kissing, actually. No.
I don't either.
It wasn't
we just
an
went
option.
into the back to sign the papers, and then we came out front, and he said, "You're Mr. and Mrs. Loewen."
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And there was never a talk growing up, like the birds and the bees.
No, my parents never.
Well, I learned everything on the street. So. And my mom, and I asked my mom why she never talked to me about nothing. Not even
When we got married on our wedding day, my mom still didn't want to say anything.
I know my aunt, when she got married, her husband was pulled aside by the father of the bride and said, "When she has a baby, you don't touch her for 2 months." That's all he got. And when and my mom said, "Oh, well, you could ask me anything." So I thought I'd ask her I wanted to know how the sperm got to the egg. It took her 2 weeks. And then she laughed the whole thing, and she was laughing so hard, and then she didn't know what to call the anatomy. She's like, "Well, his Twinkie. And I was like, oh my God, I was so cringed out. And I remember every Sunday after church, we would go to the pantry for lunch. It was a big thing. Mm-hmm. And there was a man, and all the kids used to laugh because his name was Harry Dick. Do you remember?
Oh, yes.
And my mom never ever talked about menstruating.
No, mine didn't either.
I just, all of a sudden, I didn't even know, and all of a sudden I had blood in my underwear, and I just panicked. And then I said something to my mom, and she says, "Oh, here."
I never told my mom. I figured if she didn't want to talk to me about it, I'm not telling her.
So that was all the interviews we had for today, but we just wanted to share some of the things we thought were interesting.
Yeah, some things that popped up. One thing that was interesting to me was that while me and Robyn were kind of prepping for these interviews and wondering what themes we should explore and questions we should ask, we never once thought about periods and talking about sex or anything like that. I don't know why. Probably because we're Mennonites.
Yeah, does that speak to our own upbringing?
So when the ladies brought it up in our Menno Minute, we were both like, yes, wait a second. This is a really important part of being a woman. How have we not talked about this?
I was taking notes, and all of a sudden I'm like, yes, capitalized. I'm like, oh my gosh, why have we not talked about sex?
This is such a super important thing. And for both of us as well, we both experienced a lot of purity culture growing up. So this is something that we like talking about, and we like to discuss and want to be more open about. So
we think it's so important, and it's really fun to talk about it with women of all ages and backgrounds.
So it actually popped up a lot more in future interviews. So you're going to hear more on purity culture.
Yeah. And then something I was thinking about even earlier while we were just listening to Marlene talk about midwifery and all of that is how a lot of women, to get out of getting married, would go be missionaries. And I think that is so interesting because, like, I get it. Like, I think that would have been me. I mean, it kind of was, but like...
Real life example right here.
But like this idea of like, this is your path and you must take it, and to think like, okay, like what's something I could do? Like, I want to go have an adventure, I want to go explore the world, or like I just don't want to get married,
I am not interested in men, and it's too early in history to be
aware that I, you know, could not be interested in men. Like, there's like so many reasons one would want to not not get married
or be forced into that.
And then to like choose to go overseas and be a missionary. And then that's something we talked about for our character, because we wanted to be in Canada the whole time just for ease of sets and stuff. But we thought it would be really cool for her to have like a friend or a pen pal or maybe her sister or someone who's overseas and is like experiencing a lot of single women there and just like talking about that.
And that's also a way for us to bring in some of the like different cultures of being Mennonites, because we are two white women, so how do we introduce,
we don't want to get canceled,
a Korean woman or an Ethiopian woman or whatever. Like, we can't do that as white women without blackfacing or being canceled, right?
We don't want that.
So we're like, how do we do this? So that's something that we were thinking of, is like maybe our main character gets a pen pal from another country, so we can like read the words of a woman's experience in another place.
And because like some of like they're like talked about in India, it's like 3 generations of Mennonite women now, like, because that's when
they have as long of a history as we do in being Mennonites, some of them even longer. So
no, I think that it's important to talk about.
So that'll be a cool thing to introduce into the podcast musical.
I
I
think that this is just an interesting topic in general. And like
being a young woman, man, that's our experience.
So far, that is what we know.
We're maybe slowly moving into the next stage of life, but
that's true.
That's all we've known so far.
This is what our general experience. And it is fun to talk about love and like talk about what that means. And I think like for me, like I really struggled with this idea that like you have to just get married and you have to just serve a man and your entire worth is wrapped up in what this, like, I think so many of us have struggled with that. And it feels so real, even though we are here in 2026.
Even the fact that like I started dating my now husband at 26 years old, and in my brain I was so old. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so old to be starting this process 26? Now. I was 26.
That's so funny,
right? Like, that, looking back, I'm like, what? I was still so young. What am I talking about? I got married this year, so I got married at 30, which once again in my brain I'm like, that's pretty old to be getting married, but it's not.
That's so wild. It's like so ingrained. And like I started a relationship this year, and for me it was really like I don't want to say boyfriend because I'm like I am not just a girlfriend. Like, it's the least interesting thing about me that I'm in a relationship. Like,
and yet it's the thing people want to talk to you about.
And it's like, and at the same time, like, I love it. Like, I like want to be like, oh, like, tell me, like, who are you dating? And you're like,
oh, it's so fun to like. That's girl talk. That's how we communicate with girls. We're like,
we connect over boys.
Who do you like? Who you have a crush on?
And it's so interesting. And I can't get away from it.
It's there. It's there no matter what. It's just part of who we are. I don't know.
But c'est la vie.
C'est la vie. I guess. Tegan talks about that in our episode 6. You'll hear some conversation about
some more
her
men-centered life. Tune into episode 6.
Yeah.
But you gotta wait a little bit.
Yes. All right. See you later.